You know, we've made a lot of excuses around why poor kids and kids of color aren't doing well. And what we know is that in the places in this country where they are doing well, regardless of their background, there is a belief that every single one of them can and will learn, and the teachers in the system have no excuse for their failure.
Democratic Visions is handmade in Eden Prairie and Minnetonka by DFL Senate District 42.
Sondra Samuels is president of the Peace Foundation, which is the main player in a bold educational reform program in Minneapolis. The Peace Foundation has now melded itself into the Northside Achievement Zone, which we call NAZ, which is based upon the results achieved in a number of mostly urban programs that have reduced dropout rates in school districts. They are definitely result-oriented. Sondra serves as the CEO of NAZ. Sondra, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Tim. Glad to be here.
Before we get into the Peace Foundation and NAZ, I understand that you participated in an economic summit with Governor Dayton recently. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, it was an incredible, incredible event in the heart of North Minneapolis at the Urban Research and Outreach Center, part of the University of Minnesota, standing room only. And what you saw was just a sea of black faces, hungry for attention and a dialogue with the head of our state, which hasn't, and I didn't realize that it hadn't happened in 26, 27 years.
Wow.
So there was some pent up, you know, well, thank God you're here, you know, and you'll be talking to us. So it was a momentous occasion.
It must have got your friends and neighbors pumped up, I suspect.
Oh, absolutely. And the governor, you know, the governor stood for 2 hours, no, it was more than 2 hours, and he listened to community member after community member and leader, and I mean, he like really listened. And in fact, at the end, said, I'm going to get back to you in 9 days.
Really?
With my response.
So why don't you tell me a little about NAZ? What is the program? Who is it intended to address? And what do you hope to accomplish?
Right. Well, NAZ is modeled on the Harlem Children's Zone, a really successful place-based strategy in Harlem where years ago, like 15, 20 years ago, they said, what does it take to make sure that all of our children from birth all the way through college are successful in life and in school. And so about 2.5 years ago, we had a big meeting in North Minneapolis with about 50 Northside leaders of different various types of organizations. And the question was called, do you feel like the outcomes for children in North Minneapolis, particularly kids of color, low income, is it what you would want for your own child? And if not,
what do we do about it?
What do we do about it? And could the Harlem Children's Zone be morphed enough into what it needs to be in North Minneapolis to be successful? And we kind of looked around at each other and said, well, there's no Geoffrey Canada. He's this mercurial leader in Harlem. You know, we said there are a bunch of Geoffrey Canadas. Let's try to figure this out. And so from that, we started over the next year carving out and doing research and talking to community members around what the zone might look like, where the zone would be. We carved out an 18 by 13 square block radius, 5,000 families, 7,500 children between the ages of 0 and 18 with the worst outcomes in not just the city, but also in North Minneapolis.
Well, what's the nature of the problem that you're trying to address?
The absolutely egregious achievement gap. The achievement gap is really where our white middle class students do so well, and our students of color do so poorly, especially across economic lines. In 2003, for example, out of 50 states across economic lines, as we looked at poverty, because this is not just about race, it's that overlay of race and poverty. Minnesota ranked 38th. Today, we are 49th out of 50 states.
Impossible.
Absolutely,
Really?
absolutely. With a 33% graduation rate in Minneapolis for African American kids in 4 years. It's only 69% for white students. That's not anything to write grandma about. And on a statewide level, it's about 40% for black kids and about 80% graduation for white. You know, another statistic that sticks out for me is that 88% of fourth grade African Americans are not at grade level in reading. And what we know for sure is that prison projections are being made based on 3rd and 4th grade reading scores.
I had no idea.
Yeah, you can go to the Children's Defense Fund's report all about the cradle to prison pipeline report. And it outlined, I used to think it was an urban legend. and read the report and said, no, it's happening across the country. And so when we see these huge gaps and the incarceration rate, we also have I'm sure you read about it, we talked to the governor about it last night, one of the worst employment rates employment gaps across racial lines. And while I still think that as a society, of course, we still struggle with racism and oppression and concentrations of, like I mentioned, poverty and things of that nature, there's a lot of structural things we still need to work on. The achievement gap is not just simply around academics, but it's also about a belief gap. Which kids can actually learn. We've made a lot of excuses around why poor kids and kids of color aren't doing well. And what we know is that in the places in this country where they are doing well, regardless of their background, there is a belief that every single one of them can and will learn, and the teachers in the system have no excuse for their failure.
So what specifically is NAS doing?
Yeah.
Are they involved in a pilot program at the present time?
We are.
What do you hope to accomplish, and how are you going to accomplish it?
The village has arrived. And what is the village? The village is about 60 organizations, including schools, public district, public charter, parochial, mentoring organizations, housing organizations. We've all come together and we've looked at each other and we've said we can do better. Mm-hmm. Time to stop pointing fingers, right? And so we have put together a mission to create a culture of achievement in that geographic zone that I talked about of North Minneapolis.
5,000 families?
5,000 families, 7,500 kids, where all children graduate from high school college ready. The organizations are providing high touch to the families to provide services for them around housing, mentoring, out of school time, employment, health, mental health. And this year is the pilot year. So we're talking high touch.
How are you going to extend that out to beyond the 200 families?
Pilot families. Our plan is, while we make sure that the system is working right now, we'll start scaling up next year and the year after.
Expanding?
In terms of, yes. University of Minnesota Center for Early Education and Development is our internal evaluator. Wilder Research is our external evaluator. So because we're going to measure.
Are you going to be able to tell from year to year whether this program is working, or does it take a period of years for something like this to work?
We know that there are certain benchmarks in that child's life. So one, mom gets prenatal checks. The kids are screened. Okay, the kids are ready for K. They're reading at grade level by third grade. When they get to high school, they're taking the math and science courses that put them on a trajectory, the ACT. So there's things that we can measure all across the way, Tim, but those are more outputs. What we're really looking at are the outcomes. What we want to see is parents who don't usually go to ECFE classes, the early childhood programs and so on. We want to get them in some way where they feel like it's culturally relevant and they're learning things they didn't know about brain development and positive parenting. So we're partnering with Minneapolis Public Schools. They are a stalwart partner of ours, the Youth Coordinating Board, and our engagement team of outreach workers who are going out there, Tim, and grabbing a family's hand and saying, I'm with you. Yeah. If you want to succeed and you want help for your kid to get to college, I'm going to be here to make sure that happens.
Sondra, I know you were a Peace Corps volunteer serving in Botswana. So the skills and talents that you brought to the Peace Corps, are they translatable into what you're doing right now?
So in fact, when I was leaving Peace Corps, we got a fax, because now Bill Clinton was president, and it said, Peace Corps meet AmeriCorps. So that was when and it said, you've served your country overseas, now come home and serve. And that has never left me, around what does it look like to be home and serve with that same idealism, that same passion, that same fire around justice and equality and brotherhood and sisterhood.
Guess what? That spark hasn't gone out.
Yeah, well.
Before we go, we note the passing of Dottie Titus, another force for good in North Minneapolis. Dottie Titus left the Jordan neighborhood a better place. We'll see you next time. Minnepolis.